even so, doesn't capitalism cause us to become kind of an ugly consumerist culture?
This is probably the toughest objection, and because what's funny is a lot of the objections that we often get for a free economy, they come more from the political left, but this one is just as common from the political right. I know when I wrote Money, Greed, and God, a guy named Rod Dreher, who writes now for the American Conservative, had written a book called Crunchy Cons, and he essentially argued for the kind of aesthetic impoverishment of what he referred to as capitalism. And it's funny because I was reading the book just as I visited Hong Kong. And anybody that's been to Hong Kong knows, especially in the Kowloon district, which is just kind of across the bay from downtown, I mean, it's thronged with merchants. They're on the streets, they're on the sidewalks, there are signs going up several stories so you can hardly see the sky, neon signs, people are trying to sell you stuff. This is kind of the ugly capitalism that I think people often imagine, or they think about unattractive strip malls in suburbs and things like that. Well, of course, I'm not going to argue those are attractive things. You know, I don't especially like the garishness in Hong Kong. But I think it's important to distinguish between economic arguments and economic judgments and aesthetic ones. And so, of course, I would prefer a nice, you know, pleasant, urban shopping environment with small little shops and things like that. The truth of the matter is, stuff in those places is far more expensive. So the reality is that, you know, if you're a mother of 5 and you're trying to get by on a limited budget, you're going to be interested in places, the big box stores like Costco and Walmart. Is that illegitimate? Have you sort of sold your soul? Well, no, you're just simply evaluating things differently. It's more important to you that your kids have enough to eat, right, than that your surroundings and your shopping are pleasant. To make the mistake of confusing those is what I call the artsy myth. And so that's the kind of crucial distinction that I would encourage people to make. Many of the innovations of industrialism are profound. I mean, even in the lowest income countries now, life expectancy is about twice what it was just 100 years ago. In the developed world, it's even much greater. And so the sort of mass production and industrialization has led to a drastic decrease in things like childhood and you know, at-birth deaths. It's increased the availability of goods that were only available to the elites a few centuries ago. So that now, you might think, okay, well, is capitalism aesthetically impoverished? It's only the industrial methods of the free economy that have made it possible for any ordinary kid, even in the, you know, below the poverty line, to, if he wants to, listen on his iPod to Mozart or Beethoven. This is something that no one could have done before. And so my sort of advice when it comes to dealing with these aesthetic questions is to say, you know, let different things be different and accept that some things are, you know, they're useful, but they're not especially beautiful. What's fascinating is that after a country reaches, or a society reaches, a certain sort of financial level or per capita income, what happens is that our priorities change. So think if you're a very low income person in which 40% of your budget, right, it goes to food, you're not going to be focused probably on the, you know, the aesthetics of the food experience or the supply chain for the food. You're concerned about cost. That's perfectly legitimate. But there's something that you could sort of call it an aesthetic Kuznets curve that happens in society, so that once people become fairly prosperous. So most Americans, you know, our food income is just about 10 or less than 10% of our income. Now these questions, things like the artisanal foods, the artisanal economy, it makes sense that that would emerge after industrialism. But it's important to realize that, you know, right now, if you want to buy free-range eggs and organic milk, you're free to do that because we have a free economy. But we shouldn't try to make that mandatory, because at the moment, those are mostly luxury goods. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about a free economy is that it allows people that, you know, are just trying to make ends meet to make their choices, which we might not like aesthetically, but it also allows others of us to make different choices if we so prefer. That's the great thing about freedom.